And I know that the story is long and it's graphic, but I want it to be real, because nobody prepared me for what I went through. So as you can tell by the title of this video, I had a miscarriage, and I'm trying not to cry about it. I haven't cried about it in a little while, so I'm trying not to, but there's something kind of surreal about talking to a camera in an empty room about it. In July of this year, a week after my birthday actually, Jaden and I found out that we were expecting, and it wasn't planned. It was quite a surprise, but it was something that I had wanted. I've always wanted to be a mother, and ever since I was little, you know, like people ask children all the time, what do you want to be when you grow up? And of course, like, every kid gives an answer like, oh, I want to be a firefighter, or I want to be a doctor, or whatever. But you know, every now and then I'd give some answers like, oh, I'd love to be a singer or an actress. But ever since I was little, I've always wanted to be a mom. Like, that's just what I saw myself being when I grew up, and I see it as like such an honor and a privilege to be a mother. So when we found out that I was expecting, as scary and as big of a surprise as it was, I was so excited. I was so ready. I think even in the beginning, I was afraid to dream too big about it, just in case something happened. But as I got past, you know, 6 weeks, 7 weeks, I felt more confident about my pregnancy, and everything felt right. I was already getting like a little bit of a pooch. I was feeling all of the pregnancy hormones and symptoms that everyone talks about, everything. I was feeling all of that. I was feeling pregnant, and it was just like surreal. And then everything just kind of took a turn for the worst. I think it was a Sunday, and I was 9 weeks, and I was getting really excited because we had decided that at 10 weeks we were going to make everything public and everyone would know that we were going to have a baby. And so I was kind of counting down the days until that would happen. And just before leaving for church, I went to the bathroom and I noticed some spotting. It was very light. It didn't seem like it was anything I should be worried about, but of course, like, this was my first pregnancy and I was very nervous about it. And so I freaked out a little bit and cried a bit, and started Googling everything and praying, and I tried everything. I just wanted to feel better about the bleeding, and it wasn't bad. I didn't feel any pain. I wasn't cramping. I felt like a dull ache in my lower back and a little bit in my pelvic area. And so I had responsibilities at church that morning, so I pushed myself to go. I acted like everything was fine, and during worship I felt like I had to go to the bathroom. And so when I went to the bathroom, I was bleeding a little bit more. Again, it wasn't a lot, but enough to be concerned about what was happening. So I freaked out and I messaged my sister Kaylee, who is in South Africa, And she told me that there was a gynecologist in the church and that I should go get her and talk to her. So I did, and I had a good conversation, and she kind of just assured me that, you know, it could be nothing, and that it happens, but if it's a miscarriage, to, you know, to know that it happens to a lot of women, and that it's not uncommon, and that you know, miscarriages happen usually when the baby isn't genetically normal, or yeah. So she tried to give me a little bit more peace, and I felt better. And so we decided to go home, and by the time I got home, I took a little bit of a nap, and I remember, like, I don't even know how to explain this, but I sat up from laying down, and I just knew I was gonna get this intense backache. I don't even know how I knew, but I remember sitting up and telling my husband, my back's gonna hurt, like I'm gonna feel it. And I rushed to the bathroom, and I don't know why I did that, but as soon as I sat on the toilet, my back just like had this intense pain that I've never felt before, and it rushed from my lower back all the way up my back, and it was so sore that I began to cry because it was overwhelming. And I remember screaming to Jaden and saying, get me a wet cloth, I'm gonna pass out. Like, I just felt like I needed something cold on me to keep me awake, and I just sat there like crying in pain. And so we drove 30 minutes to an emergency room that is a part of Winnie Palmer, which is a really great women's hospital. And so I felt more comfortable driving the distance, going there, knowing that they would help me because they see this kind of stuff. So I go in, and they were great, and had an ultrasound done. And when I was looking at the ultrasound, the technician, she said that I was 6 weeks, 2 days. And I was like, that can't be. Like, I'm 9 weeks. I know for a fact, because I had been calculating everything and keeping track of everything. I had done ovulation tests. I had like calculated, you know, every period, everything. And so I knew that I wasn't wrong. And so my heart sunk a little bit, because when I was looking at the ultrasound, I saw, you know, kind of like the gestational sac, that little black spot that you see amongst the gray, but I didn't see a baby in there. And so I was freaking out, thinking there's nothing inside. But they assured me that I was just 6 weeks, 2 days, and they couldn't find a heartbeat because it was too early. So I went back to my little waiting room, bedroom place, whatever you call it. And I cried and cried, because I was like, Jaden, like, I must be miscarrying, because I know my dates. I know I'm supposed to be 9 weeks, not 6 weeks, 2 days. So we waited like an hour before anybody came in to give us the results and tell me, you know, like, I was expecting them to say, you are miscarrying, that's just what's happening. But when the doctor came in, she was very happy, she was smiling, and she was kind of like, oh, everything's fine. The only problem is that you have a subchronic hemorrhage. And basically what that is when the placenta and the uterus, when there's like blood in between the two, and it's kind of like a tear in a sense. And the way it was explained to me is that the placenta is like a suction cup, and it needs to suction straight from the uterine wall. Like, it needs to get the blood out of there, and it needs to suction straight from there. And sometimes what happens is the blood pools, it like gets into a little bubble, and the placenta can't suck that blood straight out. It needs to be attached to the wall. And so what happens is either your body reabsorbs it through the uterine wall or it just comes out of you. And they told me that baby would be fine and that it didn't affect anything with the pregnancy. And that, you know, everything should be fine. That 85% of women go on to having perfect pregnancies and beautiful babies, and that I should be fine. I should be one of them. So, sorry. So I went home and I felt a lot better. I was happy. I was just like, wow, like I'm gonna get through this, you know? I was put on bed rest and that's what I did. I stayed in bed all day, got up to only go to the bathroom, and I thought that I'd be fine. By Friday, so that was on a Sunday, by Friday, sorry. By Friday, I had more bleeding, and again, it wasn't crazy. It wasn't what I was told a miscarriage was gonna look like. It was kind of like a period, just a normal basic period. And but I was in more pain. Nothing too bad, but it was just kind of getting worse. And so I told Jaden that I needed to go to the ER, and we decided that we were going to go to the brand new ER, which was down the road from us, literally 5 minutes away. And you know, if it was nothing, then it would be fine and we could just come back home. So we got there and they were so rude to us, and that could be a whole other story in itself. But I think that that's kind of what aided to how traumatic my experience was. And up until this point, like, everything was really scary, but I hadn't gone through anything traumatic yet. And I'll get to that, but here I was at the ER and this doctor was just so rude to me. And right off the bat, before checking me, before seeing what was going on, seeing how much I was bleeding, she was just like, you're miscarrying, that's what's happening. And she was rude, and she said how the products of conception inside of me, it's not real. It's not a real baby until it's past 20 weeks. And she just made me feel like I had to get over it. I'm miscarrying and I just have to get over it. And that just like broke me, because it doesn't matter how far along you are. Like, when you want that baby, you want that baby. You will fight for that baby. And I wanted it so bad. So it was really emotional hearing that from her, and I fought with the doctor. I remember asking her, how do you know? Like, you haven't even checked me. How do you know that that's what's happening to me? I have a subchronic hemorrhage. That's what's wrong. That's why I'm bleeding. And I really held on to that faith. And anyway, they sent me home and they told me that everything still looked fine. And that the baby was still in the same place. Everything seemed like it was good. And then they're like, so you're 6 weeks, 2 days. And then I like definitely knew something was wrong, because that's exactly what I was almost a week ago. And so I went home a little more defeated, but I still had hope, because I really felt like it was the right time. Like, God wanted this baby here, so I held on to all this hope. The next night, I decided that I needed to go in the bath. I thought that that would help me feel better. I thought that it would be okay. It would make my muscles relax a bit. And just to let you know a little more details, anybody else who's not really familiar with the female body and pregnancy won't really understand this, but for those of you who do understand it, each time that I was checked, my cervix was still closed. So I was still okay to go into the bath and everything. That was still safe. And so I had Jaden run me a bath, and I sat in there like and within a minute, I just had this weird pain. And again, I couldn't describe it because at the time I didn't understand what it was. It felt more like a cramp, but it was different, and it felt debilitating. I felt like I couldn't do anything, and I remember screaming for Jaden, and all I was concerned about was washing my hair. As soon as I had gotten into the bath, I had laid down and wet my hair, and it needed to be washed, and then I felt the pain, and so all that I was thinking of is like, I need soap in my hair, I need him to rinse it out for me. And so he had to just bend over and with a cup try and get the soap out. And the more time that passed, the more that I was in pain, and I was like, I need to get out of here, like, you need to help me up. And he helped me up, and that's when I felt like the intensity of the pain, because in the water, I guess, when you're laying and your muscles are relaxing, obviously it helped a bit. At the time, it didn't feel like it was helping, but as soon as I stood up, it was just like, ugh, like I was just in this extreme pain, and I hardly was able to get to my bed, but by the time I got there, I was just stuck in the fetal position, and Jaden had to rub my back and just make sure I was okay, because I was just in excruciating pain. And this pain, it would come and go. It would stay for like a minute and then be gone for a minute or 2 minutes and then be back again. And it was just unlike anything I had ever felt. So that stayed like that for an hour, and then I just went to bed and the pain was gone. So I thought that it was just caused by the bath, that I shouldn't have gone, and that it was probably too hot for me to handle. And so yeah, I went to bed and everything seemed fine. When I woke up in the morning, I was a little bit sore. It kind of felt bruised, like my stomach kind of felt bruised, but I didn't have that severe, intense pain anymore. And so I thought everything was fine. Jaden said, you know, are you gonna be okay when I go to church? And I was like, yes, please go, I'm fine. I'll be here when you get back. Like, he's only gonna be gone for a couple of hours, so it didn't seem like a big deal at the time. And so there I was sitting in bed, and all of a sudden I was just a little bit uncomfortable. And so I kept trying to like lay different ways, and I just felt like something just didn't feel right. But I thought it was just normal again, kind of caused by the subchronic hemorrhage. Tried not to think about it too much. And then I had the urge to go to the bathroom. And this is when everything happened, and it didn't happen the way I ever thought it would happen. But I stood up to go to the bathroom, and by the time I got to the toilet, there was blood all on the floor and all on my clothes, and it was just like this gush. And it wouldn't stop. It kept pouring as I sat on the toilet. It just went everywhere. And I called my mom because I knew I couldn't get a hold of Jaden because he was in church. So I called my mom on FaceTime, and she kind of just helped me through it, and I had to show her everything. And she was like, okay, like, you're miscarrying, that's what's happening. And at the same time, I was in severe pain, worse than the night before, but the same kind of pain. It would come and then it would go, and then it'd come and it would go. And I figured out that it was contractions, and I was in labor, basically. And and that was hard. sitting there like shaking and freaking out. Not only are you so overwhelmed by the sight and by the pain and all that you're experiencing in that moment, but you also have this emotional pain that just washes over you like, you know, I'm losing my baby right now and there's nothing that you can do about it. And my mom managed to get a hold of Jaden, and he called me, and I remember him asking me if he had to come home, because I don't think he knew what was going on. I think my mom just said, you need to go home, you need Ash, you need to call Ash. And so when he called me, I don't think he understood at first what was going on, but I had to tell him what was going on, and it took him a while to come home. It probably took him like 30 minutes. And in that time, I remember telling my mom, like, I have to push, and I don't know, there's something coming out of me. And she just walked me through it, and every time I had a contraction, I would push a little harder. And I passed 2 or 3 pretty large clots. And that was hard because one of them kind of got stuck, and I just had to spend a few minutes trying to push it out. I didn't want to pull it out, just had to wait for a contraction, and the whole toilet was so filled. I'm sorry for the graphics, but I want to be real, because when I sat for hours after everything happened, and I sat on YouTube searching for videos of women who are in the same situation as me, I so wanted to hear a story that sounded just like mine, but I couldn't find anything that was similar. Everyone that had a miscarriage story, as sad as it was for them, it didn't sound as gruesome as mine was appearing to be. They didn't say that they were in any pain that was more than a heavy period, and if they had a lot of blood, it just wasn't that bad. None of them seemed to be going through what I was going through, so that was hard, having to experience all of that at once. And by the time Jaden got home, I felt so bad for him, because he had to walk into the situation kind of not knowing what to expect before he got there. And yeah, that was hard. That was hard, seeing the look on his face, but he rose to the occasion, and he did everything he could to help me. He got me up, he got me dressed to go to the ER, and he had to, unfortunately, he had to unclog the toilet, because that's how much stuff was inside. It looked like I was dying. That's what it looked like. So he got me into the car, which was difficult because we live on the 3rd floor. So that was very painful. And got into the car, and by the time we got to the ER, which was the same bad ER that we went to like the 2 days before, but it was the only one we can go to fast enough. So we got there, and I had to be rolled in a wheelchair, and I was just in so much pain. And as we went through the doors, I remember the doctor, the same rude doctor, was holding the door open, and she was just kind of shaking her head at me like you should have listened, like I was right. And I remember the nurse asking me what's wrong, what's happening, as I'm being wheeled in, and the doctor just spoke over me and was like, oh, she's miscarrying. And the nurse was like, oh, you know her? And then the doctor said, yeah, I saw her 2 days ago and I told her that this was gonna happen. And I just felt like there was no compassion. Like, where I was, nobody cared about me. Nobody cared that I was going to be a mom and then now I'm not. I was gonna have a baby and now I'm not. And that I was going also through this physical pain. They just didn't care about me. And so they got me into the room and they did an exam, and the doctor was like, yeah, this is gross. There's all clots everywhere. There's blood everywhere. She was so graphic about what she was seeing. She just narrated everything she was seeing as if it didn't matter. And she used tools to grab out blood clots that were in the way, and she used a suction machine to suck up blood, and everything hurt and it was painful, and she was rough with me. And what was awful was the tube that she used to suck excess blood out. It was from behind me, so the tube was pulled across me, and I had to lay there in pain. Not only from pain from the exam itself, but pain from the contractions. And I had to watch as clumps of blood were sucked into that tube. And then they put an IV in and they gave me morphine for the pain. And finally, the intensity, the scariness of the pain was kind of dulled out by the morphine. It's strange because I've never had morphine before, and so I didn't know what to expect, but I kind of thought that it would take away my pain, but instead it felt like it was more of a mental thing. It felt like it calmed my anxieties. It felt like it caused my brain to think that the pain that I was experiencing didn't hurt as bad. And obviously that is what it is, but how I'm trying to explain it is I still felt every contraction and I still felt the intensity of them. It was just like my brain was saying it doesn't hurt that bad, but I still physically felt it just like I felt it before the morphine. And so once I got that, I was able to kind of stop crying, because at that point I hadn't stopped crying since I started bleeding. And so that was when I kind of had to accept what was happening. For like 6-7 hours we were in the ER. They kept coming in, checking up on me, doing the exam again and again. They kept having to look, and there's more into that. I could literally go on forever talking about what exactly I experienced in there, but needless to say, it was traumatic, not only feeling everything, but watching them treat me and say the things that they said and do the things that they did. Everything was so harsh. It was clinical. There was no patience in it. There was no compassion or empathy. It was just so sterile, and that was hard because yet again I felt like I was fighting, and I was fighting for something I couldn't have. And so anyway, just before being discharged, the doctor said, she came in and she told me that I was in fact miscarrying, but that I had not passed the baby yet, and that I should expect to do so within 2 to 3 days. So go home and just let it happen. And that was hard too, because I didn't know how I was going to continue to be in this amount of pain without, you know, the drugs to kind of keep me sane. And I think the biggest thing that frustrates me is that nobody realizes that I was like actually in labor, and that it wasn't just, oh, a miscarriage. Like when people say miscarriage, they think of just, you know, blood. and a heavy period and some pain, and then suddenly you're not pregnant anymore. But what people don't realize is that, you know, you have to pass a baby through the birth canal. And the fact that everything was happening naturally to me, there was no help, there was no DNC, I didn't take any pill or anything. The miscarriage was happening completely naturally, and it was happening in such an intense way that my body was getting rid of it just like it would get ready for birth. And so I didn't know how I was gonna labor at home in all of this pain. And anyway, the morphine wore off just before we were about to leave to go home. So they gave me a Percocet, which did nothing. It did not affect my body whatsoever. I still had intense pain, and if anything, it made me very nauseous. By the time we started driving out of the ER parking lot, I felt violently ill. I wanted to vomit everywhere, and I did everything that I could to not throw up in the car. Seeming we only lived 5 minutes away, so I didn't want to do that. So that whole time was kind of a blur, because I was trying not to throw up, but I was also having contractions, and I was hot. And so we finally got to our apartment, parked the car, and then I had to walk 3 flights of stairs. And at this point, I just wanted to lay down. I wasn't feeling good. I didn't want to vomit. I didn't want to add like another thing to the list of things that my body did that day, so I didn't want to throw up. So I tried keeping it in. By the time I got to the top steps, the last set of stairs, I remember feeling like I was gonna pass out, like the worst feeling of passing out that I had ever felt before. Like all of my vision was lost. My head felt like outside of my body, and I just, up until that point, I don't remember getting inside into my bed, but I remember that like last moment of feeling all of that. So I somehow got to my bed. I think Jaden dragged me to my bed because I just needed to lay flat so that I wouldn't throw up. And once I came to, I told Jaden I need to go sit on the toilet. Something's happening, like it's just really, really strong. There's a lot of pressure. So I went and I sat on the toilet. Again, still bleeding everywhere at this point. Nothing had stopped. I was still bleeding profusely. But I had this intense pressure in my pelvic area, and like, I'm just gonna be real with you guys, it felt like I needed to go number 2 really badly, like it was right there but it couldn't come out type of feeling, like pressure and deep pain, all while still having contractions. And at this point the contractions were consistent. I didn't feel like I had a moment to breathe and not feel pain. It just like kept happening. And you know, at this point you're like in and out of consciousness, you're screaming. I had made noises that I don't think my body had ever made before, groaning and whatnot. And I remember feeling like sitting on the toilet wasn't doing enough good. Like I felt like I had to just go into a birthing position and push. And so I kind of got on the floor and did a squat and rocked back and forth, pushing and grunting and screaming, and I felt like I was literally in active labor about to give birth. So I did that for a while until I couldn't do it anymore and I didn't have strength. So I laid down on the floor, and Jaden just got a pillow and a blanket and just kind of covered me up, and I didn't care. I was just bleeding everywhere. I didn't care. I just needed to lay down. And at that point I kind of passed out. I was not conscious at all. It kind of felt like I was sleeping, but I know that I wasn't sleeping. It was more like my body giving up. And 20 or 30 minutes after that, I kind of came to, and the pain was kind of dull. It was almost like it wasn't there anymore. And so I had asked Jaden to help me get up. And this was, in total, I had spent an hour, I think, since I'd come home in like active labor, but 30 minutes from when I was laying on the floor. And I thought I was okay to kind of go back into bed, so Jaden helped me crawl to bed because I couldn't stand up, and he put a clean dog pee pad on the bed because at that point I had nothing that was strong enough to catch all the blood. So I just lay there, and I remember calling my dad and just crying to him because I was so upset. And I wanted to tell him that I was okay, but that it was hard. And I think, like, that's a whole other thing in itself, is like I reverted to a child, and I just wanted my parents to be by me and to hold me. Yeah, it was just this intense feeling of wanting to go back to childhood, and I just wanted my mom and my dad to tell me that it was gonna be okay. And so when I got off the phone with my dad, and Jaden came back because he had to run to the store to get me some things, so he was gone for like 20-30 minutes. And when he came back, I remember crying and saying, like, I just want this out of me. I want the baby out of me. I'm done feeling this pain. You know, I'm already mourning the loss of this baby, so I want it gone. I just want it gone. And I think when you're in that moment, you don't know what to do with yourself. You're tired. Your body is tired. You're emotionally tired. And it's sickening knowing that this baby that you were supposed to have and hold and raise and love, this baby is not there anymore. And that you'll never get to hold it. And it's sickening knowing that it's laying inside of you and that you're carrying it, but there's no life in it. And so I just wanted it out. And at that point, it was strange because all the pain was just like whoosh, it like just went away, and I was in no more pain anymore. Still felt sore, but there was no contractions. And so I told Jaden, take me to the bathroom one last time. I think I should just go sit on the toilet. And as he helped me up, more blood just gushed out of me. And next minute, I know I'm sitting on the toilet with Jaden on his knees in front of me, and I have the whole baby and the placenta in my hand. I don't remember pushing it out or anything, but there it was. And I remember just shaking and crying, being sad and overwhelmed, but being so happy that it was over and that I wasn't in pain anymore. It was, all the pain was gone. Like, literally, I can't stress this enough, and I can't explain the feeling, but all the pain was gone. And then it was over. I had my baby in my hands. And I know that the story is long and it's graphic, but I want it to be real, because nobody prepared me for what I went through. And I understand that what I went through is not what everybody goes through, especially since the baby was only measuring at 6 weeks. But later on, at doctor's checkups that followed, we kind of realized that even though the baby was only 6 weeks, my uterus was the size of a 10-week pregnancy when I miscarried. And that probably the reason why I got the subchorionic hemorrhage, the separation, was because the baby stopped growing and my uterus kept growing, and the size difference is what made the split. And so my body was trying to get rid of it as if it were 10 weeks. And so that's why it was as intense as it was. But I want people to know that stuff like this happens, and it's heartbreaking and it's traumatic. I mean, I've been through a lot of traumatic things in my life, but this was the most visually traumatic and the most traumatic in such a short period of time. And so yeah, it will stay with me forever. I think what I went through was crazy and not normal. There was nothing that could have prepared me for what I experienced, and even me just sitting down and explaining everything that happened, I don't think I can truly express every single thing and the depth that it had. Like, it was just mind-blowing, and I think you could only understand if you've been through the exact same thing. Another thing that I want to add before I finish this video is that with every couple that loses a child, whether it's a child that was stillborn or you lost the child after they were born, or you lose them before they were born, at whatever stage, it's still a loss. And the husband goes through it as well. Even though us as women go through it physically, there are always men on the other side of it who are sitting there feeling helpless. They also had dreams, they also had hopes, they also wanted that baby. But here they are sitting, watching you go through something that they cannot control, that they can't fix for you. And I just want to say that whenever you see your friends going through this, don't forget to love on the husband as well, because he is going through so much as well, and he's going through it in a way that the wife can't understand. So just remember that. And also, I also just want to say that we are okay. We're doing fine. And even though I spent this whole video crying, my heart is happy and I'm at peace. We both are at peace. Because I know that miscarriage, I feel like, at least in our case, was just out of God's love for us. I know that sounds crazy to say, but I know that we have a very, very specific purpose in life. And you know, I know Holy Spirit has been talking to us about certain things that we have to do and changes in our life. And he's also been talking to us about children, and I know that God has a specific plan for us, and not only us, but for our kids in the future. And everyone is born at a very special, specific time. And when you're born, you're purposed for that time. And yeah, there's stuff as there's stuff like science and biology, and sometimes babies are created when they're not supposed to be created, and I do feel like it's out of God's love that he lets us go through this. But I do know that there's a promise for a child to come after this, and that's where we put our hope and our trust and our faith is in God and the promise that he has for us. So don't lose hope when you go through something like this. Don't lose that hope and that faith that you have in God, because it will come. Like, he's got a very specific plan for each and every one, and even though he's not a puppet master, he's not controlling everything and every little decision we make, but he loves us so much that sometimes he gives us a redo, and he wants it to be specific and perfect. And even though that sounds crazy, that's what I believe. So I just want to thank everybody for watching this video. I know it was very long and very in-depth, but I just wanted to share what we went through. And I don't know when I'm gonna post this, because right now it's only been like 3 weeks, 2 or 3 weeks since it happened, and I don't know if I'm ready or if Jaden is ready to let everybody know what happened, but I do feel it in my heart to share this story, and that's why I made this video today. So thank you all for watching, and I will see you in a much lighter, much happier video next time. Bye guys.